Okay, so my last video ended abruptly because I lost battery power. So I think the last sentence I said before I was cut off, or when I was being cut off, was that people have, I think generally, I guess in Western society, people seem to ideologically have a problem taking responsibility for, or taking initiative as much as they could, because they sell themselves off. They find that they get to, or even if they're not very conscious of it, they kind of get swept away in various forces that have to do with, the modern, consumer society, or whatever philosophy that comes with a society like ours, like I was saying, that has many remnants from older philosophies, which may or may not be very useful or valid. So, to start now, work in life 5, I'd like to say that I am going to start talking, I guess, in the same way that my last video started off, which is starting with something that may be an oversimplification of the point, but I think it still makes a good starting point. Because my last video, I was talking about I wasn't really talking about, I don't think at least, free will, or trying to prove a free will, or arguing for free will, but more arguing for the notion of free will, and the practice that is associated with free will, and the kind of lifestyle and decision making that someone goes through when they grasp or they engage with the concept of free will. And so I'd like to start off this video with just a note that I do not wish to have an argument with myself over whether or not free will exists, or if the world is predetermined. And maybe I will be making, maybe addresses to whether or not that's the case. Maybe there will be a little bit of a spat between myself on that subject, but that's not the main argument. The main argument really is the notion and the practice of I guess, free will versus determinacy in an ideological sense. Whether or not we should embrace these, and what kind of good decisions or bad decisions can be made when really I guess embracing these, not in just accepting that they're the case, but saying, okay, I'm going to base my decision making and how I feel about the world in line with, I guess, a philosophy that is based upon determinacy and free will or responsibility. So this video will be now talking from the counterpoint of, going with the flow, or, accepting consequences, not in a very, not in the way that I'm trying to, pin the blame on someone and saying, okay, well, yeah, this was my fault and I accept that, and, well, not necessarily, maybe that's the case, but it's going to be more in the sense of, I guess just being content or comprehensive of the present, and, how things play out, instead of really, I guess, trying to pin them on, me being responsible, or, trying to be haunted. I don't know. Maybe what I'm saying now is just total nonsense. So anyway, I'm going to be getting to school. Perhaps when I continue this video on my way home, it'll be a little bit more sensible, comprehensive. Okay, so it's a continuation of Work and Life 5. I have more of a direction here that I can head on for a clear delivery for this video. Although I know the last time I was really rambly, kind of really wasn't. I was saying some stuff. I wasn't really saying much though, for the amount of time it took for me to say it. But now I have a direction. I'm thinking of taking this in a somewhat unexpected direction. I'm thinking right now about Buddhism, and I'm kind of reminded of well, both of my more recent education in kind of like Buddhist philosophy that I had, I guess, a couple of semesters back with one of my humanities teachers, and also kind of a little discussion I had that I read over. Just a little comment exchange on YouTube on one of my older videos that had to do with a manga in relation to Buddhism, and I'm kind of reminded of that since I went back and read some of the comments on my older videos. And really what I'm finding interesting, and this might be a good, or maybe an interesting case for the side of embracing determinacy, or embracing just the way things are, rather than, having an aching head over every single thing that doesn't go the way you expected, or goes in unexpected ways. And this was there was this kind of notion that I remember that was I think it was dualism, having a dualistic worldview can be the source of much trouble and maybe even evil. And I guess this kind of becomes an argument against a very strong sense of responsibility, or a very strong sense of blame or self-righteousness, or I guess the bad things, or the problematic things that come with a strong sense of responsibility about, this happened because it was my fault, or this happened because it was his fault. And I think I'll be talking about that. I mean, that's what this is supposed to be about. Whether or not I agree with it, or even whether or not it's a healthy line of reasoning, that's what a debate is supposed to be about. I'm supposed to, for each video, each work and life, walk and talk, kind of become biased and, just take a unidirectional, I guess, a line of argument. And that's what I'd like to do. So I'll get right on that. Slightly being distracted by the crowd, so I'll be back. So here I am, waiting for the metro, and I guess I'll start with that. I can't count how many occasions I've really had a hard time, I guess, living with myself. I mean, over, while agonizing over mistakes that I've done, things that could have gone differently or better, or even being very concerned with the very, I guess, outcomes that you could say aren't really good or bad. Just thinking about, the past and, the different possibilities. What if I had done this instead of that? And I have to be biased here. I should probably say that I can understand, at least that I can understand the sort of calm or comfort that comes with saying that, this is the not the best of all possible worlds, but the only possible world. I mean, that's the way how things happen, and just accepting that can, I guess, really bring you to doing more important things with your time, more practical things in your time, instead of I guess maybe wasting your time on beating yourself over the head over things that could have been. And I really, maybe I should really, in this video, try to find a reasoning for this, I guess, the whole distinction of good and bad. or different possibilities being a source of evil. I think I'm starting to see that. Okay, so I'm going to be taking my ride right when I get back. I'm going to get on that. So interesting monologue about evil and perhaps where it comes from in, I guess, the Buddhist sense. And maybe I'm completely off. Some Buddhists might come along and tell me that, you know, that's not really how it works. But I'm going to have I guess, a creative time thinking about that, and, you know, coming up with my own reasons for how a dualistic worldview can lead to hardship. Okay, so here's my line of thought. A dualistic worldview, one that I guess puts I guess a lot of emphasis on, I guess, one spectrum of notions, ideas, and, you know, conditions, and puts a lot of negative emphasis on another one, will well, first of all, give people the notion, the idea that they need to have an agenda. They need to strongly strive for a particular goal. Now, I'm not one to say that striving for a particular goal is really what creates is really evil in and of itself. But maybe I can take this and perhaps suggest that under some initial conditions, that's maybe what gave rise to I guess, negativity, evil, or suffering. So let's say we have just a society where it's pretty small. Let's say it's a small group of people. They have enough resources for each of them, and they're all getting by. They only take what they need. And there's one guy that comes along that puts a more positive emphasis on pleasure. So he's going to say, well, more pleasure equals, you know, a better life. And he's going to go try to think of ways to, I guess, you know, increase productivity so that he has more resources. And this might lead him to cheating the other people because his agenda is to have more pleasure. And this will cause a deficiency in, you know, everyone else's resources. Perhaps something like that can be seen as a kind of origin of suffering, you know, from a dualistic worldview. Maybe that's a bunch of bollocks. I'm sure a Buddhist would be able to explain that notion better than I can. But let's go with that. Maybe I can think about you know, kind of view that I've been, I guess, something kind of like Gary's view, you know, where he sees a problem with life, and, you know, some people that confront him kind of have this kind of mentality of, well, you know, everything's all right, you know, just chill, and they tell him, you know, everything's cool. Why don't you just, you know, enjoy life, and, you know, I think you're putting too much thought in it. And some Gary's critics are kind of saying something like that, and I guess they use that same idea, you know, to, I guess, at least have comfort in, you know, the lives of animals and the lives of whoever on earth suffers. In that, you know, we just have to, I guess, take pleasure in, you know, the positive things in our lives, and think that, you know, whatever amount of suffering is worth it. I think that's generally one of the points from where Gary's critics come from. Not necessarily his best critics, but I'm wondering if this kind of you know, comfort, or not exactly laissez-faire attitude, or whatever it is, from this Buddhist side, I guess they would say that Gary is perhaps seeing, and this isn't me saying it, maybe I could say it, but I'm not really saying this in order to challenge Gary or his viewpoint. I'm just trying to go somewhere with this mentality that I'm trying to espouse in this particular video, that because Gary is, I guess, putting such a strong negative emphasis on pain, he's losing sight of, life's innate values, or maybe he's losing sight of, the counterbalance, pleasure, the pleasure of being alive. And some people would say that, the pleasure of being alive is merely an illusion and pain is real. But both of them really are just feelings. They're emotions, they're chemical responses to conditions. Pain is the response to, I guess, the potential for danger, the potential for, I guess, destruction or death. And pleasure is the comfort in, I guess, chemicals, the products, food, or whatever, that to help us survive. Or just pleasure is, there's a pleasure in merely existing. Contemplation, something that Corey has brought up. Contemplation, thought, observation, these are all things that give us entertainment. They give us a certain amount of pleasure, and not really this kind of instant gratification, or this kind of obvious gratification that one gets when one takes drugs or eats something good, that tastes good, or even watches a movie. But clearly, there's something to be said about a strong pleasure in being just existing and being alive, when one avoids death or one avoids obliteration. There's obviously some sort of value that we are putting in life itself. And you can't really get away saying that our survival instincts, can't really get away with saying that our survival instincts are only impulses that are meaningless, because everything really is just a collection of impulses. And so I don't think that you can put, and I think I can probably take this kind of philosophy that I'm trying to juggle right now of anti-dualism. Maybe you can help me in saying that this whole, vilifying pain and somehow disregarding pleasure is an unnecessary and harmful dualism, or kind of emphasis that does not need to be done. That brings us to kind of disregarding some good that we actually have being alive, and undervaluing it. And so I guess a Buddhist would say that Gary's dualism here, whatever it may be, overvaluing suffering, valuing pain, and undervaluing pleasure, is something that gives him much discomfort. And maybe some people have criticized him in saying that he is kind of espousing a dangerous philosophy, in that it can encourage people to losing hope in, I guess, what the good that we have. Even though Gary is an advocate of you know, making circumstances better. But at the core, he has in the past said that, like, if it came to it, and if he was able to, he would just end the whole thing. So yeah, so that's you know, not to target Gary. I just thought it would be a good angle, I guess, to approach this philosophy of laissez-faire, or this kind of Buddhist anti-dualism. It's kind of, you know, be happy with the way things are. Of course, I guess ooh, I better not say this, but maybe I'll save it for the next video. But I guess I'll say it here while I'm on the subject. The danger of that would be, I'm supposed to be biased for this side, but I can't help but mention that the danger in this would be, or the one weakness that I would have to reinforce upon, or reinforce, or, you know, get rid of, is that, you know, where does the willingness to do good come from? If we're going to not want to, I guess, put a good emphasis or a bad emphasis on one side or another of a spectrum. Because the whole thing is talking about how, you know, nothing good comes from having a strong, I guess, a dualism. And, you know, some reason can be put into that. I mean, there is such thing as having too much of a fervor to do good, and you end up doing bad. I mean, I can come back to the example of the video that I had made in the past, that I talked about when I had an exchange of comments with a Buddhist. You know, it was about a manga. The protagonist, his name is Light Yagami. He received this book called the Death Note, and whoever's name he wrote in it would die. And he had a very strong sense of justice. His father was a police officer, and, you know, he saw that, you know, society was kind of falling apart, was unjust. Criminals would get away with a lot of crimes. So what he did was that he took this notebook and he just went on a genocide of criminals, a criminal side, and that's what happened. But he kind of got too, you know, he deified himself, and all of a sudden, you know, anyone who got in his way was evil themselves. So I can see, you know, the value. There's value in I guess, the argument in that, you know, one must not, I guess, dabble with absolutes like that, because they can lead us to very dangerous places. So I will give credit to that. I should be giving credit to that because, you know, that's this video's side of the argument. And I guess I will try to exploit the weaknesses of this more, you know, further in my next video, since I will be arguing for the other side of emphasis and responsibility. And yeah, and, you know, maybe if I can identify some weaknesses in this, I can also find methods of resolving those conflicts. So yes, that's where I am at this point in this series. I think I had an interesting finish there. The beginning of this video was kind of slow, but I think I got somewhere. So there we are. I'll see you next time.